So there's one big mistake that you're making during the load movement process that's costing you money. It will eventually start to cost you some of those relationships that you've worked so hard to develop with you and your shippers. So what I'm going to do today is to take you inside this video and show you exactly the mistake that you're making, and then how to steer your ship clear of the obstacle that could definitely sink your ship. So come on inside, sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. So we work really hard to develop relationship with shippers. So we don't want to ruin those relationships by doing things that are outside of standard business protocol. And what usually happens is new freight brokers, they go in and they give random pricing to shippers. This is a big mistake, because what it exposes you to now is you have to take that load to the marketplace and sell it. And what usually happens is you don't have enough money in that load. And now you're caught between a rock and a hard place. You have to make a decision to say whether or not you're going to move that load and lose money. Are you going to go back to the shipper and ask for additional funds to move the load? Or are you just going to go outright and give the load back to the shipper and let them know that you can't move it? Now, I'm going to give you some insight on the route that I would suggest that you take, but take a look at it, decide which is best for you, because different strokes for different folks. But do know that your decision could have a big impact on your relationship with the shipper moving forward. All right, now let's first deal with what I mean when I say random pricing. When you give random pricing, what you're doing is going to a load board, taking a look at what the average prices are in a lane, and going back and giving the shipper that cost. Or even worse, what you're doing is saying, hey, I'm going to use the old $2 a mile rule. Whatever the number of miles, I'm going to time that times 2 and let the shipper know that we can get it done at that number. That is a random price, and that is what gets us into trouble, not drilling down on the lane to find out exactly what you can get it moved for, because what the next freight broker can get it moved for is not necessarily what you can get it moved for. So you need to go into the lane to find out what exactly your brokerage can move that lane for, and how you do that is to go into, yes, to start with the load board, but then to dig down on the specifics in the lane to find out how much trucking capacity is within the lane, the fuel surcharge, some different dynamics in the lane that you're going to want to check out to make sure that when you give a price, you can stand behind that price. That is what's important, because if you give a shipper a price and then you can't move the load, then we have to explore some of these other options that we're getting ready to go into. All right, the first option, and the best option, in my opinion, is if you give a shipper a price, stand behind that price. Deliver on the price that you gave. Because remember, we're in the very early parts of the relationship. The shipper is looking at you very closely. Do you stand behind your word? Now, you mentioned all of that stuff during the relationship when you were courting the shipper. You surely were talking about they would be able to trust you. You are a person of integrity. You're going to do what you say you're going to do. Now is your chance to do what you say you're going to do. And what you said was, hey, we can get it done for this price. When you give a price and you say that you can get it done for that price, then I would do everything within my power to stand behind that price, because there are repercussions. There are problems that you're going to face if you cannot stand behind that price. Shippers may look at you as incompetent, a novice, not knowing what it is that you're doing, because if you can't give a price and then go to the marketplace and sell at that price, then that says that you don't know how to rate lanes. So you want to make sure that if you give the shipper a price, stand behind that price. I've been in that situation where I bid a lane that was $1,500 less than it should have been. And I could have given the lane back to the shipper. I could have said, hey, I need to go and get in and get some more money from the shipper to be able to move this load. But I decided to stand behind the number that I had given, because that was what I said that I would do. I said that's what I would be able to move the load for, so I stood behind that price. Did we lose money? Yes. But what did it do for the relationship? It was the start of a relationship, and we made a whole lot more money than the money that we lost on that load, and it was based on a test. It's a test. You're always going to have tests when you first get started, whether you look at it that way or not. That was a test for us. And we passed that test with flying colors because we did what we said we would do. Now, do you think that that shipper didn't know that that was a very low price that we gave in that lane, lower than any other prices that they had been given? Sure they did. But they're watching, they're seeing, hey, is this guy gonna stand behind this price? And we did that. And it benefited us in the long run because we got a whole lot more lanes with that shipper. We even got contracts with that shipper, even still today are working with that shipper. So it's about doing what you say you're gonna do, in my opinion. And if that comes at a cost sometimes, because you made a mistake, that's a cost that I'm willing to eat. And the other side of that is you're supposed to bring value to your shipper. And if you're going to the shipper, giving them a price, and then turning back around and saying, oh, I need additional dollars, then the shipper is not going to think very highly of you, because you're putting them in a position now that they have bypassed certain carriers, other freight brokers based on your price, and now you're turning your back to say, nah, I can't do that. Well, that's not going to look very favorable for you. So it's better to price higher sometimes, higher than you think that you can get the price or get the load moved at, because at least that way you're not going to be locked into a price where you're going to lose money. Now, how I see it is sometimes, especially when you first get started in the process of learning how to do this thing that we call bidding on lanes, you're going to lose money. That's just a part of it. The question is how much? So yes, you want to lessen the blow if you can, but sometimes you have to be willing to accept what comes with the territory. That comes with being a freight broker, learning how to price lanes. All right, the third and final option is owning your mistake as quickly as possible. You see, sometimes you're going to make mistakes. That's just the world that we live in. And when we own that mistake, admit to that mistake right away. What it says to the shipper is that this is someone who's willing to at least admit when they're wrong. Because if you don't own it right away, then you leave the shipper in a worse position. So we want to make sure that we leave them in the best position. So if we know that we're not going to be able to get that load moved, if the price that you gave is considerably less than what you can go and sell it for in the marketplace, sometimes you're going to want to have to go ahead and admit that you were wrong, admit that you made a mistake, so that you can give that load back to the shipper right away so that they can get on their way. Now, of course, sometimes we don't like to admit mistakes. We don't like to say that we're wrong. But in some cases, it's better to say that you're wrong than to keep the shipper in limbo and know that you're not going to be able to move that load. So I like that option a little bit better than the second option of asking for more money, because it owns up to your error instead of asking the shipper to say, okay, I made the mistake, but I want you to pay for it. This says that I made the mistake, I'm willing to eat it. Now, if they want to come back and say, hey, do you need additional dollars to move it? Then you might want to go with that option. But if they don't say that, then, and you just want to give the load back, that could be a better option than option number 2. That's just my opinion. That's the way that I look at it. I want you to take a look at all of these options. When it comes down to making pricing errors, you have to look at that and decide how you're going to navigate that space, because there are going to be errors that you make. That's just how it works. But how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to eat the cost yourself and say, hey, it was a mistake, it was on me? Are you going to ask the shipper for more money so they can pay for your mistake? Or are you going to just say, hey, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm owning my mistake, and I want to give you the load back before we go any further. If they want to provide additional dollars, that's definitely something I would look at, but I definitely wouldn't go back to that shipper and ask for more money. For me, the very best option is always number 1. Take it and as a learning experience. If you bid it too low on the lane, take it as a learning experience, move that load, eat that cost, and I think that it would be much better for you in the long run. That's just my opinion. That's my way of seeing it. You take a look at it for yourself and decide which is the best route for you. That's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. If you're interested in learning more about the freight broker business, I'm going to leave a link in the description. It's my free 5-video series titled How the Load Movement Process Works. It'll give you a look into the freight broker business, let you see how it works. You'll see me talking to shippers, talking to carriers. That way you can get a really good idea of how the business works before you decide to come into it. I wish you the very best in your life and business. See you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded. So now, just in case you're curious, the name of the game for the freight broker is getting customers, getting shippers. I'll let you know in this video how freight brokers earn $10,000 per month on just one shipper.